the guy's going to be straight back to the videos. What if Duncan was on the heroes team? So in episode 3, so I didn't. So I'm this is why. So I'm not going to give what if Duncan was on the heroes team. Now you suggested this to me, and I don't want to give the person a shout out because if I've messed up on their suggestion, I don't want to feel like it's it's kind of on me, but like they kind of wanted this what if, and I thought from the beginning it'd just be easier because to me it makes more sense. But let's get back to the video. So I feel like Courtney's not here to suggest Lindsay pushing now. So I think some time will pass, and that's why I think Duncan will do it. I just think Duncan will just end up pushing himself. And Courtney and Gwen are arguing. Joe still pushes for her team. Alondra comes out the robot suit and still wins the challenge for the villains. Big thing here, Mike, Zoe, and Cameron were a big threat last season. And Duncan talks to people. Now, he mainly talks to Sierra because Sierra has befriended Sam, and she's not obsessed with Cameron yet. So Duncan says to Sierra, Lindsay, and Sam, we need to get rid of Mike, Zoe, or Cameron because they are massive threats. Sam agrees, and so does Lindsay. Sierra does like Cameron and has started befriending with him, but says that Cameron won last season. So these three target Duncan, with the other four targeting Cameron. So Cameron is eliminated. He's pretty shocked, but ultimately gets it since he won last season and wishes Mike and Zoe the best of luck. Now, in the next episode, we have the pieces, and Lightning still miscounts the pieces. Gwen's trying to make up with Courtney. Courtney's arguing. I feel like Duncan is able to win with his team, and Lightning still gets voted off. In episode 3, it's the shooting challenge. To be honest, Duncan's pretty good in this challenge in the original, anyways. He wouldn't save Gwen because he wouldn't travel with her for the entire time, so it's Courtney and Gwen traveling together. Joe still shoots Scott. And to be honest, I want to know they work together in this version since Courtney and Gwen are causing drama on the team, which is less drama on their back. To be honest, Lindsay gets caught early on, and Sam isn't using his team and shield this time, so he just gets caught. Sarah isn't going crazy over Cameron since he's already eliminated, so she's actually more challenge focused and actually in a better mindset as well. I think the villains still lose the challenge though, since I think Zoe still beats Joe, and ultimately everyone targets Joe, but there's no team swap this time. So in episode 4 is where we have the eating challenge. So everybody still eats. Sam is still hiding breadcrumbs in his pockets, and because of that, he's gets voted off. I think even Duncan agrees that he has to go here. But he does talk to Lindsay and Sierra that they need to get rid of Mal, Mike, and Zoe, since they are a couple. Now, in episode 5 is Mood Madness. Now, Mal does his whistle, so Duncan does recognize him. In this version, this is where Duncan will figure out who he is. Gwen still saves Courtney, and the heroes will lose. So Mal and Zoe vote for Duncan, and Sierra and Duncan get Lindsay to vote for Mal. Now, Mike would be going home, except this is the episode where he swaps to the villains. I think Zoe's pretty annoyed at Duncan for getting rid of Mike, but Duncan realizes he's kind of in trouble. Now, no opposite the inspection, I think Mal doesn't do that well. Zoe still goes off to win the challenge. Heather still finds the immunity idol at this point. And Courtney obviously still likes Scott. Heather gets someone to target Alejandro since there'd be no reason for them to target Mal. Maybe Scott would go for Mike since last season, since he wouldn't really like him, but to be honest, there's really no reason for them to get rid of Mike. However, Alan just uses the mid idol and gets rid of Heather. In episode 7 is the opposite expectations, and Zoe gets 3 points for last round. Alan fights brother Jose and wins. Mal gets a point, Gwen and Courtney get a point for fighting each other, Scott fails. Duncan fights is not the bird, so I imagine his fair would now be fighting Courtney, and he fails. Sierra fails. Now, Lindsay is going to be fighting Heather and standing up to Heather. And I feel like Lindsay does get the point here because she can easily do that, no bother. So the villains win the challenge. Now, Mal would want Duncan or Sierra gone, but I think Courtney and Gwen want Duncan out. Alejandro would agree with this since he doesn't really care for Duncan. And Mal would also want Duncan out, so everyone would choose to target Duncan in this episode, so they actually still target Sierra for similar reasons to the original. Because I don't see Mal being on this team instead of Cameron changing that perspective, so I do think Sierra gets voted off. So now we're at the merge, and basically, our merge is the same, except Lindsay's here instead of Cameron. So Alger goes about by himself. Courtney and Gwen, Mal was about between Scott, Zoe, and Lindsay. Cameron liked to suggest the idea of them putting Zoe in danger because that was I don't know why Cameron did that, but Duncan doesn't lead the boat because he's not doing that bad boy arc, so ultimately he stays on the boat. Now Allender still wins the challenge, but Mal rigged this elimination. So who does he rig it against? Well, Allender's out the running because he doesn't know him. Gwen Courtney is out as well. Lindsay's a non-factor. Scott is a non-factor. Duncan is a potential candidate here to rig the votes against. However, I think Mal would actually go against Zoe. Since Zoe would be wanting to save Mike. And she's somebody that would want to help Mike rather than Mal. And so Mal can't really have that, so he rigs the votes against Zoe. He'd take Alejandro to first in the hotel, and he would actually frame Alejandro in this version, which of course Alejandro would notice and then take the votes for himself. Obviously, Alejandro can't look around the hotel to try and find evidence of Mal because Mal's now with him. In this episode, Courtney and Gwen got together with Scott. Gwen's off by her own. I think Courtney and Scott get caught together. Lindsay gets caught early on. Mal and Alejandro. Duncan and Gwen meet up with each other, and Duncan gives the immunity to Gwen. Eventually, the two apologize and make up. So now, Courtney, Gwen, and Duncan are 3 lines of Scott. And here, Duncan warns him about Mal. And Scott would agree that Mike thought Mal didn't like Mike for last season. So I think Alejandro gets Lindsay. Lindsay votes Courtney. Alejandro votes Courtney. I think the other four, though, vote Mal. Episode 10. The obstacle course. So Alejandro wins the challenge since I think you do the best of everyone here. We know how everybody else does. Lindsay does terrible. We just don't know how Duncan does. So Duncan did pretty good in Island, but I don't think he'd be able to match Alejandro's level of enthusiasm, who did very well in this challenge, which isn't a bad thing because he most certainly would have gotten eliminated. Most certainly gotten eliminated. And probability here, with this 4-person alliance, there's just no way that Lindsay doesn't get voted off. Episode 11 is Sunday, Monday, Sunday. Now, Courtney still makes the chart, but she wants to take Scott to the end, then eliminate Duncan, Alejandro, then Duncan, then Gwen. Gwen is annoyed at Courtney for not taking her to the end, but I think she'd get it in this version since Scott is her boyfriend. And Scott would still be upset with Courtney for having a tail. Duncan wouldn't be too annoyed because he'd be like, yeah, I was planning to get rid of you next anyway. To be honest, everyone gets to the end when it comes to the eating challenge. Courtney pukes, ice cream puked on. Gwen gets brain freeze. I think Duncan wins the challenge since Alejandro's not very good at eating challenges, so I think Duncan actually wins. So I think Gwen votes for Courtney. Scott and Courtney vote for Alejandro. Alejandro votes for Courtney. Duncan to Alejandro to Courtney. Duncan has a decision to make because he could vote for Alejandro or he could vote for Courtney. He votes Alejandro since even though he doesn't like Courtney, he knows that Alejandro has been in the finale before. as a huge down threat, and it's going to win a lot of challenges. So, and Courtney and Gwen are a couple. Courtney and Scott are basically a couple. So he agrees to get rid of Courtney here. So I think Courtney's eliminated. So episode 12 is Scott gets the diamond, Gwen gets the painting, I think Duncan gets the Yeti, and then Alejandra gets the Golden Chris. So I think Duncan gets the Golden Chris, Alejandra gets the Yeti. So I think, to be honest, Scott would come back with the diamond. Alejandra wins the challenge, and Duncan just can't find the statuettes. We never find out the statuette. So fourth place, Duncan. So Alejandra would choose to take Scott to the end over Gwen, since Gwen's competed in the finale before and she's competed in more seasons. Well, Scott's not really a threat here, so ultimately he'd get rid of Gwen. So Alejandra and Scott are both in the finale, and to be honest, Scott gets Courtney, Duncan, Alejandra gets Heather and Joe. So I think Scott wins the season, but that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. This thing was just on if Duncan was on the Heroes team. And yeah, perhaps the one. Peace and farewell.